Part 2. Sacredness, the warrior's world. That mind of fearfulness should be put in the cradle of loving kindness and suckled with the profound and brilliant milk of eternal doubtlessness. In the cool shade of fearlessness fan it with the fan of joy and happiness. When it grows older, with various displays of phenomena, lead it to the self-existing playground. When it grows older still, in order to promote the primordial confidence, lead it to the archery range of the warriors. When it grows older still, to awaken primordial self-nature, let it see the society of men which possesses beauty and dignity. Then, the fearful mind can change into the warrior's mind, and that eternally youthful confidence can expand into space without beginning or end. At that point it sees the greatest and Sunday 11 nowness we need to find the link between our traditions and our present experience of life. Nowness, or the magic of the present moment, is what joins the wisdom of the past with the present. From the moment you are born, when you first try and breathe free from your mother's womb, you are a separate individual. Of course, there is still emotional attachment, or an emotional umbilical cord, that connects you to your parents. But as you grow older and pass from infancy into youth and maturity, as each year passes, your attachment decreases. You become an individual who can function separate from your mother and father. In that journey through life, human beings must overcome the neurotic attachment of being the child of somebody. The principles of warriorship that we discussed in Part 1 are connected with how individuals can develop personal discipline so that they become mature and independent and therefore experience a sense of personal freedom. But then, once that development has taken place, it is equally important to share the comradeship of human society. This is an organic expression of the greater vision of warriorship. It is based on the appreciation of the larger world. In the process of becoming a warrior, you naturally begin to feel a deep fellowship with human beings. That is the real basis for helping others and, ultimately, for making a genuine contribution to society. However, your connection to other human beings and your concern for their welfare have to be manifested personally, practically. Abstractly caring about others is not enough. The most practical and immediate way to begin sharing with others and working for their benefit is to work with your own domestic situation and to expand from there. So an important step in becoming a warrior is to become a family person, someone who respects his or her everyday domestic life and is committed to uplifting that situation. You can't help society purely on the basis of your vision for the nation or the world. There are many ideas of how to organize a society so that it will fulfill people's needs. There is, of course, the popular idea of democratic rule by the people. Another approach is that rule by an elite will produce a progressive society. A third idea is to take a scientific approach to ruling in which natural resources are equally distributed and a completely balanced ecology is created. These and other ideas may have value, but they must be integrated with an individual human being's experience of domestic life. Otherwise you have a huge gap between your grand vision for society and the reality of everyday existence. To use one model of family life, a man and a woman meet, they fall in love and marry, they set up a household and then they may have children. Then, they have to worry about whether the dishwasher is working or whether they have the money to buy a new stove. As the children grow up, they go to school to learn to read and write. Some children may have an ideal relationship with their parents, but the family has money problems. Or there may be lots of money, but a very difficult family relationship. We go back and forth between those problems. We should respect life on that mundane level, because the only way to implement our vision for society is to bring it down to the situation of a single household. Becoming a family person also means taking pride in the wisdom of your family heritage. From the Shambhala point of view, respecting your family and your upbringing has nothing to do with separating yourself from others or becoming arrogant about your ancestry. Rather, it is based on realizing that the structure and experience of family life actually reflect the deep-seated wisdom of the culture. That wisdom has been passed down to you, and it is actually present in your everyday, domestic life. So by appreciating your family tradition, you are opening yourself further to the richness of the world. I remember very clearly the experience of discovering my own connection to family heritage. I was born in a cowshed in eastern Tibet, where people have never seen a tree. The people of that region live on pasture land that has no trees or even bushes. They subsist on meat and milk products throughout the whole year. I was born a son of this genuine earth, the son of a peasant. At a very early age I was recognized as a Tyogu, or incarnate Lama, and I was taken to the Samang monasteries to receive my training and become a monk. So, almost from birth, I was taken out of my family situation and placed in a monastic environment. I was always called by my religious name, Trungpa Rinpoche. Nevertheless, I never forgot my birth. When I moved to the monastery, my mother accompanied me and stayed with me for several years until I was old enough to begin my formal education. Once when I was about 4 or 5, I asked my mother, "Mother, what is our name?" She was very shy. She said, "What do you mean by our?" "You know that your name is Trungpa Rinpoche." But I insisted. I asked, "What is our name?" "Our family name?" "Where do we come from?" And she said, "Well, you should forget that. It's a very humble name, and you might be ashamed of it." But I still insisted, saying, "What is our family name?" "What is it?" At the time I was playing with some pickled radishes that are fed to horses. I was picking up these little pickled radishes off the floor outside the monastery kitchen. Tyokus are not supposed to eat them, but I was chewing on one, and I kept saying, "Mother, what is our name? What is our family name?" I was about to bite into another pickled radish, which was dirty, and she was very concerned, and she was so shy. But she was also intrigued that I had asked. We had an intense moment of relating with each other. I remember that it was a sunny day, and the sun shone from a window in the roof onto her face. She looked old and young at the same time. I kept asking, "What is our family name?" And finally she said, "Makpo, Makpo, of course. But don't bite that pickle. It's for the horses." I'm afraid I did bite it, and I remember chewing it. It was very crunchy and tasted something like a zakmamano, a kind of Japanese pickle, and I liked it very much. I looked at my mother and asked, "Does that mean I'm Makpo too?" She wasn't quite sure. She said, "Well, you are Rinpoche." Then, I distinctly remember asking her whether I was her son who came out of her body, and at first she said, "Yes." But then she said, "Well, maybe I'm an inhuman being, a subhuman being. I have a woman's body. I had an inferior birth. Please go back to your quarters." And she took me in her arms and carried me from the kitchen annex to my quarters. Nonetheless, I have kept the name Makpo as my family name, my identity and pride. My mother was a very gentle person. As far as I know, she never did anything aggressive, and she was always accommodating and kind to others. I learned a great deal about the principles of human society from the wisdom of my mother. In modern times, the emphasis has shifted away from the family as the focus of society. Earlier, the focus on the family was partly a matter of survival. For example, before there were hospitals and doctors, a woman often relied on her mother to help her deliver her children and for help in raising the children. But now, medical research has incorporated the grandmother's wisdom, and children are delivered by doctors in a hospital maternity ward. In most areas, the grandparents' wisdom is no longer needed, and they have no role to play. They end up in an old age home or a retirement community, and occasionally they come to visit their grandchildren and watch how nicely they play. In some societies, people used to set up shrines to venerate their ancestors. Even today, in such a modern society as Japan, there is still a strong tradition of ancestor worship. You may think that such practices are purely a function of primitive thinking or superstition, but in fact, the veneration of your ancestral lineage can be a sign of respect for the accumulated wisdom of your culture. I am not suggesting that we reinstate ancestor worship, but it is necessary to appreciate that for many thousands of years, human beings have been collecting wisdom. We should appreciate the accomplishments of our ancestors, that human beings learned to make tools, that they developed knives and bows and arrows, that they learned to cut down trees, to cook their food and to add spices to it. We should not ignore the contributions of the past. How to construct a building has thousands of years of history behind it. First, human beings lived in caves. Then they learned how to build huts. Then they learned how to construct a building with pillars and columns. Finally, they learned how to construct a building without columns in the center, with arches spanning the ceiling, which is a remarkable discovery. Such wisdom has to be respected. It is not regarded as a setting sun approach at all. Many people must have been crushed when they tried to build a structure without central columns and it collapsed. People must have sacrificed their lives until a model was developed that worked. You might say such an accomplishment is insignificant, but on the other hand, the failure to appreciate the resourcefulness of human existence, which we call basic goodness, has become one of the world's biggest problems. However, venerating the past in itself will not solve the world's problems. We need to find a link between our traditions and our present experience of life. Nowness, or the magic of the present moment, is what joins the wisdom of the past with the present. When you appreciate a painting or a piece of music or a work of literature, no matter when it was created, you appreciate it now. You experience the same nowness in which it was created. It is always now. The way to experience nowness is to realize that this very moment, this very point in your life, is always the occasion. So the consideration of where you are and what you are on the spot is very important. That is one reason that your family situation, your domestic everyday life, is so important. You should regard your home as sacred, as a golden opportunity to experience nowness. Appreciating sacredness begins very simply by taking an interest in all the details of your life. Interest is simply applying awareness to what goes on in your everyday life, awareness while you are cooking, awareness while you're driving, awareness while you're changing diapers, even awareness while you're arguing. Such awareness can help to free you from speed, chaos, neurosis, and resentment of all kinds. It can free you from the obstacles to nowness so that you can cheer up on the spot all the time. The principle of nowness is also very important to any effort to establish an enlightened society. You may wonder what the best approach is to helping society and how you can know that what you are doing is authentic or good. The only answer is nowness. Now is the important point. That now is a real now. If you are unable to experience now, then you are corrupted because you are looking for another now, which is impossible. If you do that, there can only be past or future. When corruption enters a culture, it is because that culture ceases to be now. It becomes past and future. Periods in history when great art was created, when learning advanced, or peace spread, were all now. Those situations happened at the very moment of their now. But after now happened, then those cultures lost their now. You have to maintain nowness so that you don't duplicate corruption, so that you don't corrupt now, and so that you don't have false synonyms for now at all. The vision of enlightened society is that tradition and culture and wisdom and dignity can be experienced now and kept now on everyone's part. In that way there can never be corruption of any kind at all. Enlightened society must rest on a good foundation. The nowness of your family situation is that foundation. From it you can expand. By regarding your home as sacred, you can enter into domestic situations with awareness and with delight, rather than feeling that you are subjecting yourself to chaos. It may seem that washing dishes and cooking dinner are completely mundane activities, but if you apply awareness in any situation, then you are training your whole being so that you will be able to open yourself further, rather than narrowing your existence. You may feel that you have a good vision for society, but that your life is filled with hassles, money problems, problems relating to your spouse or caring for your children, and that those two things, vision and ordinary life, are opposing one another. But vision and practicality can be joined together in nowness. Too often, people think that solving the world's problems is based on conquering the earth, rather than on touching the earth, touching ground. That is one definition of the setting sun mentality, trying to conquer the earth so that you can ward off reality. There are all kinds of deodorant sprays to keep you from smelling the real world, and all kinds of processed food to keep you from tasting raw ingredients. Shambhala Vision is not trying to create a fantasy world where no one has to see blood or experience a nightmare. Shambhala Vision is based on living on this earth, the real earth, the earth that grows crops, the earth that nurtures your existence. You can learn to live on this earth, how to camp, how to pitch a tent, how to ride a horse, milk a cow, build a fire. Even though you may be living in a city in the 20th century, you can learn to experience the sacredness, the nowness of reality. That is the basis for creating an enlightened society,